All right, looks like we have a majority of people have logged in. Nice crowd today. Thank you so much for joining. So my name is Jason Lesnetsky. I'm a Member Services Director with ERB. So happy for you to be with us today. This is the last of our MSD series where the Member Services Directors have shared just short 10 to 20 minute sessions on all of the different ERB programs to give you an idea of what is available, whether you are a longtime user of any of ERB's programs or are relatively new and just want to learn. So if you haven't been able to attend some of the other ones, be sure to reach out to your Member Services Director, and we'll be happy to get you the links to all of those recorded webinars. Joining me today are my colleagues, Lisa Stern and Kelly Bornman. They are watching the Q&A for us and will be monitoring the session so that we can take care of all of your questions if you have them as well. Today's session will be focused on our CTP, Comprehensive Testing Program. So hopefully that is what you are looking for. Another heads up that this session is being recorded. So if you either want to rewatch any of it just to get, make sure you heard what you thought you heard, or if you want to share with any colleagues, keep an eye out for a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with the recording information in it. So you'll have that as well. All right, with that said, let us go ahead and get started. I mentioned earlier, we'll be monitoring the Q&A, so you should notice that in your Zoom toolbar, there's a Q&A button that you can type questions into throughout the session. And we'll take some time at the end to answer those questions. So go ahead, add them anytime, and then of course, we'll take a little break at the end to answer any specific questions as well. All right, so if you're not familiar with ERB, we are a nonprofit educational insights organization. We have been serving schools around the world for over 90 years. We believe in the power of unlocking every student's full potential with access to quality education for all learners, regardless of their background or circumstances. Our core belief is that assessment data and learning tools should be used equitably, not as a gatekeeper, but as a gateway to learning and growth. We celebrate the value and dignity of all, from students and their families to our employees and member schools. We work diligently to create tools for learning that are research-based and recognize the uniqueness of each student. We believe that information about student learning facilitates progress over time and is a valuable tool for unlocking student potential because it helps identify strengths and areas for growth. With reliable data and valid interpretations, we can best support students' learning needs and aspirations. Our assessments and learning tools go beyond the traditional measures of academic performance to include understanding of the student's sense of well-being and belonging, as well as the social emotional tools they use to navigate their environment. So that's just a little kind of update on where ERB's gone with our vision and mission over the last few years. So just like to share that with everybody to kind of talk about where we're going. And we're excited because we are really adding a lot of great areas that will help across all of that as well. So just want to share, ERB is a company that offers many different types of assessments. So you see here, we do assessments in the admission arena, achievement, and social emotional learning programs and assessment. Today, we will be focusing on our comprehensive testing, which falls under achievement, one of our two flagship programs, along with our IC admissions test. So what is CTP? It does stand for the Comprehensive Testing Program. A lot of people out there just call the CTP the ERB, so you may have heard that along the way, but it is a rigorous standardized achievement assessment. And just a few bullet points that kind of highlighted, it is valid and reliable. ERB's been doing testing for a long time. The CTP itself has been around for 50 plus years, probably close to 60 years. So validity and reliability are extremely important to us. The test is research-based. For how long we've been doing this, we always, with every iteration, we make sure that we include the latest research on item writing, test creation, and everything along those ways related to data. It's easy to use. One of the things we pride ourselves is whether you're giving the paper pencil version or the online version, we try to make it very easy to get up and running and start using this assessment. It's comprehensive. We're going to talk a little bit more about the areas that are covered further through the presentation, but it covers a great deal of area across reading, language arts, mathematics, and science. And then, of course, the most important part, once you complete testing, are the data and analytics that you receive afterwards. So I'm going to share a little bit of information on our 360 Access reporting portal, our brand new kind of reporting for the next generation, and where all of your data for CTP will show up as well. Right, so just a little deeper dive into some of those areas. As far as validity and reliability goes, this is a norm reference test. So the purpose of the assessment is to compare your student scores versus other groups of students. So the two core norms that we offer are the national and independent school norm. The national norm is going to be a comparison of your students versus any other type of student across the United States. Public schools, charter schools, independent schools. But really, since we know the majority of students, probably 90+% of students across the United States are in public schools, it really is a public school norm. Lets you know where your students would perform if they were in a public school. But we also have an independent school norm. And because we work with hundreds of independent schools, we have really strong norms comparing your students to other independent similar type schools. And then we also work with many associations. If you're a member of a specific educational association, you can reach out to us to find out if we have a norm for that association, which allows you to get very specific information in that area as well. So you really do have multiple different ways of looking at the data that really help in your analysis and your insights. Any particular test is going to be based on a certain set of standards. And we feel like we go by the most basic national standards that are out there. We go with these three organizations listed on the screen. The NCTM is the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics. NCTE is the National Council for Teachers of English, and the ILA is the International Literacy Association. We really feel most schools' curricula probably started with these standards. And of course, every school is going to be a little bit different, going to be tweaked differently. And you actually will have access to this through our CTP handbook webpage that gives you access to all of these standards. So once again, if you're not sure where to find that information, reach out to your member services director and we can point you the right way. And then one of the other real outstanding parts of this assessment is not only do you get the typical achievement scores, reading comprehension, mathematics, vocabulary, writing skills, but we offer two cognitive subtests as well, verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning. These give you a potential learning, an aptitude score on your students in those core areas that allow you to compare students' kind of ability, aptitude versus their achievement in the corresponding areas. So a lot of times it can help with understanding if students are working on par with their ability, underachieving their ability, or really pushing their ability to its limits. I mentioned earlier, flexibility was a big part of the test. So the content areas covered are varied, as I mentioned before, across math, language arts, and we do have a science subtest in the CTP online modality only. Another part of the flexibility are our large testing windows. Basically, for CTP, it's split up into two halves of the year. Fall would be the first half of the year, spring would be the second half. So you have a really wide range to pick when your testing windows are. We do recommend that if you test in the fall, to test as early in the fall as possible, so you get the most use of that data throughout the year. And if you test in the spring, as late as possible without the kids dealing with burnout, teachers working with end of year burnout, to get a really good idea of where your students are at throughout the course of the year. But with that said, we know schedules are so difficult to maintain through a year, and which is why we have these large testing windows. And then for CTP, we do offer both paper and online modalities. So you can pick and choose by grade level whether your students do paper or the online version of the test. And then, of course, timeliness, the ability to have access to data as quickly as possible. Obviously, for the online version, you have access to data within 24 to 48 hours of completing testing. It will show up in our 360 Access portal, and you will be able to start making actionable decisions right from that moment. For paper pencil, takes a little bit longer. You have to send us the scores. We have to scan them, upload them, score them, all of that. Takes about 3 to 4 weeks to receive scores with the paper testing. But once that happens, they're immediately uploaded to the same portal, to the 360 Access portal. And then I'm going to show you a little bit later the 360 Access portal, but the important part of it is the new version, the new reporting portal is very interactive and dynamic. So it really is set up to be very user-friendly, not just for administrators, specialists, counselors, but also for teachers, which we are really hoping they will use as well. All right, obviously cost always a question with an assessment like this. So very quickly, the online version is very easy. It's a flat $25 per student for the CTP Online. It includes all subtests, all norms. You don't have to give all subtests, but all of them are included in that price. For CTP paper, the scoring package, reporting package is $1 more, $26, represents that, scanning machines, having a warehouse to receive the answer documents and put them into the scanners, that type of thing. And then, of course, you will have to buy the testing materials for paper on top of that. Test booklets are $7.65 each, and the answer documents are $2.05. And then I just threw in there, I haven't really talked about, within the last couple of years, we've added an interim version of CTP on called Milestones. We did a MSD session on that a couple of weeks ago. If you want focused area there, then reach out to your member services director and we can send you the recording of the milestone specific. But this is an interim, smaller version of the CTP, focusing on math and reading. And for $11 more per student, you can get 2 more administrations. You can get 2 mini versions in the other seasons that you don't test. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly as well. Actually, I'll talk about it right now. So perfect segue to, these are the different options we now have available. I mentioned that if you only administer the CTP, then you'd be looking at one of these 2 options at the bottom, either giving the CTP in the fall and then nothing in the other 2 seasons, or if you're a spring CTP tester, giving that assessment and nothing else. But here are the other options you would have if you added the milestones on. So if you're fall tester, you could add the mini reading and math version in winter and or spring. Or if you're a spring tester, you could add the mini version in the fall and winter. And then we actually do have a 3-month also. And here are those testing seasons that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So you get an idea. It really is the first half of the year from August 1st to towards the end of February. There is a blackout couple of weeks here, well, about a little over a week, when no testing can occur while we transition from fall to spring. And then same thing for spring. Spring testing really covers the second half of the year with a blackout period during the summer so that you can, when we switch over from one year to the next. So you really do have a lot of flexibility in picking your testing dates. All right, and then this is just real quick, want to reference, if you do add on the milestones, then basically the testing seasons are broken up into 3, a fall, winter, and a spring. So you see, once again, whether you give the CTP in the fall or you give it in the spring, here would be the date ranges for all 3 of your test administrations. This information is available in your comprehensives portal where you do all of the testing for both CTP and milestones. We've added a tab there with the testing season information. So it's really just a click away once you're inside the comprehensives portal. All right, and then just closing out talking about CTP, I mentioned how easy it is to use the program. We have tons of help materials available inside the comprehensives portal in the help and resources area. There's an area for CTP Online and a separate area for CTP 5, which covers paper testing. And this has help videos, walkthrough videos, users manuals, directions for administration, test timing, everything you'd need to get up and running, or a refresher, if it's been a while since you've tested in the past. But also be aware that our customer support team is amazing. You see the number right there, 866-683-2335. If you have any questions on how to nuts and bolts for administering the testing or have any technical issues whatsoever, feel free to reach out to them. They're really great and can help you right in the moment. All right. And so just want to close up our last few minutes together before taking questions to show you what really the power of the test provides. And that's the data analysis and insight you can receive from our new 360 Access portal. So I'm just going to share, some screenshots. As I mentioned, it's very interactive and dynamic. So, once you set what you want to look at for a particular report, it's very easy to click edit selections and change what you're looking at to just adjust what the data looks like. And then within the reports, you'll see these black areas that are set. These color areas are actually hyperlinks that will take you to more information. So in this case, this is just an overview report that gives you big picture, 30,000 foot view of the data. How did my students perform versus the independent school norm? This sample data happens to cover milestones and CTP. If you're a CTP only user, you would see just this column with your last CTP testing that you did. Or if you wanted to go back and look at previous years, you can do that as well. But if you do the milestones and CTP, 360 Access allows you to look at that data all in one place, all together in the flow across all the different test administrations. And you see how you get the different subtests. You can focus in, look at all subtests. And as I mentioned, it's dynamic. So I could click on this view student list and it would break this subject down deeper into the individual student level. One of the other report areas is called achievement. And what this is going to allow you to do is track your students' information over time by grade level, by specific groups of students within a grade level, or by individual student. Not specifically like this, but you can track their scaled scores. So what you look at is how your students' data flows over time versus the independent school norm. And here's just an example of what it would look like if you looked at it over multiple years. So now here we can go back up to 5 years and see how my students performed, which would be the circles, versus the triangles, which represent the independent school norm. So really a great way to look at data over time and just see trends across grade levels or from one grade level to the next. And then, of course, being able to dive deep into your data, any of our reports that talk about content mastery are going to let you do a deeper dive into the content area, into a subtest. So in this case, we're looking at mathematics scores overall, but then looking more intensely at the subcategories that make up mathematics. In other words, these are the subcategories from NCTM standards that are being tested within that particular subtest. And so we can see these very specific areas, how students performed. And once again, in one test administration or across multiples. We can take that a step further. If I were to click on this mathematics button and actually drill down one level below that and see within each subcategory, the actual standards and objectives that are being tested based on those standards I mentioned before. So you can get very specific and see if there's a particular area. Notice this 36% really stands out, that this skill, applying numbers using multiple representations, is an area that I'd want to do a deeper dive into and see what's going on with that, how it matches up with my curriculum, and if I can, trigger what caused that score to be a little bit lower. And then, of course, we do provide specific student data as well. You can drill down and specific students scored within each one of those content areas, sub-content areas, and the specific skills. It will tell you how many questions were tested within that area and whether the student got those right or wrong based on order of difficulty. So you can get very specific when looking at individual students, whether you're having a conversation with a parent and you want that specific information, or you're just trying to come up with a plan for a student and how you can help that student in any particular areas they're struggling in, or even for enrichment where they work really strongly and you're looking how you can, that student can push themselves even more. So really very specific. So that's kind of a very quick overview. We do have videos that go much more in depth into 360 Access. So please feel free to reach out to one of us for more information on that. We can share those videos with you, those recordings, or you can set up time with us to do deeper dives We do provide professional development options as well. As we transition to questions, I see we do have a couple of questions here, and I believe people have been asking questions, and Kelly and Lisa have been answering them, which is great. But just as I transition to questions, I mentioned the ERB support phone number earlier. Here's the ERB support email address if you want to reach out to them that way. If you're ready to place an order for CTP, Milestones, or any ERB program, this is the website for that. And then, of course, you can contact any one of the three of us if you know what area we work in. Here it's covered. Kelly has the West and Asia. I cover the Southeast, the Southwest, and all international except Asia. And then Lisa covers the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Midwest. So if you fall in one of those areas, please feel free to reach out to us if you don't have our contact information already. So, all right, so let's take a few questions. Can you please provide the most recent norming date year for the independent norm and national norm? Great question. So for all of our norms except for the national, historically, we've gone with 3-year rolling norms. Because of the pandemic, that's been adjusted. During the main 2 years of COVID, we froze our norms just because of all the upheaval and numbers of students testing kind of changed during that time. So we locked those norms in. But this last spring, we finally opened those norms back up again. And we have an entire webinar just talking about those adjusted norms. So you can reach out to us if you want to see that recording. But for the most part, when we opened those norms up, we decided to make them kind of a partial COVID norm and a pre-COVID norm. So they're actually a 4-year norm right now, 2 years of COVID data and 2 years of pre-COVID data. So we really feel they're very strong. Between all of us, we have found that during COVID, most independent schools really handled the transition very well. And we saw just a very small drop in scoring over that time. So even though they've been adjusted, you shouldn't really see a large difference in your scores, depending on lots of other factors over that particular time. Our national norm is handled a little bit differently. Since we work mostly with independent schools, we actually do a national norming study from time to time. The current national norm is being worked on to update now. It is probably about 10 years old, although we have had outside sources kind of check on it and make sure that it's still up to par. Anecdotally, when I talk to schools that have transitioned from our test from other assessments, they still match up pretty well with what we've seen with other assessments. And we're in the process now of updating that national norm as well. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. Does the online test provide any options for accommodations? Absolutely. Pretty much any accommodation you can do from paper, you can do online also with some tweaks. Obviously, the typical accommodation is extended time. So we do offer that. You basically turn the timer off for the online test, and then you would test those students separately, and the proctor would end the session at time and a half, double time, whatever it is that they were supposed to do. We also do offer read aloud up until currently, and still right now. The read aloud would have to be done by a proctor sitting next to the student, but we are currently working on launching within the next month or two an option where there's a built-in reader for our language arts subtest. That's going to be the initial launch, where the computer will actually read the questions to the student if you give them that accommodation. And if you will be adding math and science later on this year. All right, next question. Are students able to create login access so they too can review their test results, especially at the granted level? So not currently. The 360 Access portal really is designed for school-based access only, for security purposes and to make sure that scoring is held secure. We are working on a brand new family report where for later this fall or later this year that will offer parents to be able to access, or schools to be able to give parents access, or a better way to share reports with parents. And I guess students could see that through their parents accessing that. We don't have a full picture of what's that's going to look like, but just look out for announcements for that coming forward as well. All right, next question. Down a little bit here. Where can I find, okay, that one was answered. I think that may be all of the questions. All right, I'm going to hang on here for another minute. I know we went a little bit over our typical mini time, but great questions. Glad we were able to answer them. If there are any other questions, go ahead and add them. I'll hold on here another 30 seconds or so to see if anybody has any. All right, well, that looks like it's there for today. Thank you so much for holding on to the end with this mini. Hopefully this was helpful for all of you, and have a great day.